What a surprise! Glad you could join me this wonderful time of year. It's the holiday season. You know the carols, the smell of pine, or if you're like me and from New England, the intense shoveling and seasonal depression. It's that time of year often seen as magical. I'm sure you have your own memories of the season. Maybe it was excitedly opening a Christmas present you wanted more than anything in the world and spending the whole day in ecstasy. Maybe it's when you had a cup of hot chocolate after a snowball fight. Maybe it's the beauty of a Christmas fireworks display or a parade you once saw. Whatever holiday you celebrate in whatever country, I'm sure the season at least conjures something for you. It can be a special season. Which is why they've come to sell it to you. Yeah, at this point, pointing out the commercialism of Christmas is as much of a cliche as the very tropes of the season. I get it. I'm not here to do the Charlie Brown speech. You know all about it. Coca-Cola and Santa Claus, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, Christmas cookies and Turbo Man.
Put that cookie down! Now!
But that's less what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the industry of trying to sell you the season itself, and their products as inherently part of it. Like, yeah, the season is in a lot of ways about gifts and purchases. But have you ever thought about how much media is put into selling you on the idea that the companies are part of the season? In a way, the greatest advertising of the season is not any toys or products, but the very Christmas identity and their part in it. Think M&M's and Coca-Cola polar bears. And one of the biggest endeavors into Christmas advertising is the Christmas movie. Now, the Christmas movie can be very authentic. They can be made regardless of the season or any synergy, and they can be inspired by those very real emotions I discussed earlier. From your classics like It's a Wonderful Life and Miracle on 34th Street, to your modern holiday favorites like Elf and Love Actually, to the favorites of film buffs like Tokyo Godfathers and Fanny and Alexander. But come on. You know that's not the majority. You know what I'm really talking about. The amount of Christmas movies made since the invention of the camera is possibly more than one could watch in their entire lifetime. And the vast majority are forgettable to garbage. Go ahead, go into your favorite streaming platform, type in Christmas, and just scroll. Scroll for a while, and you'll find some movies you never could have imagined actually existed. From Hallmark producing seemingly 80,000 Christmas movies a year, to forgettable straight-to-streaming trash like Christmas Camp, Christmas Freak, My Dad is Scrooge, A Jersey Christmas, A Frozen Christmas 2 Dance Off, and A Christmas Movie Christmas. These are all real! And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the many, many terrible religious war on Christmas movies.
Ooh, work, Holy Spirit! Ha! Can I get an amen?
But I'd like to introduce you to a brand of Christmas movie seen rarely, but always potent. The Oscar bait Christmas movie. Let's meet Collateral Beauty. Ah, Collateral Beauty. No one really seems to remember you much, but the people who do, don't forget. Set at Christmas, but barely touching on it, it was released around Christmas to try and harness the synergy of not only that setting, but also coming out around Oscar season. Just a look at the cast tells you what they were aiming for. And instead, came a total fucking disaster. One of the worst movies I've ever seen, and one that the minute I finally heard what it was actually about, I knew someone had to talk about it. So here we are. Yeah, I'm not covering a real Christmas movie, deal with it. Merry fucking Christmas! What? What did you expect I call the opening segment of a Christmas video? To me, Collateral Beauty's legacy in my book is one of its 4 deaths, all of which more hilarious than the last. Let's start with the first. September 7th, 2016, a trailer for a film by the name of Collateral Beauty drops online, and it is an absolute mess. Being so stereotypical and saccharine sweet in its messaging, you might have watched it and thought it was a parody if it weren't for the fact it was on a real production company's channel. A film about a poor, grieving man writing letters to time, love, and death, and getting responses, and filled with incredible lines like,
I'm time. I'm a gift, and you're wasting it.
achingly overwrought and filled with stars. It felt like an obvious, cliche, desperate attempt for Oscar attention. Even its credits: Academy Award nominee Will Smith, Academy Award nominee Edward Norton, Academy Award winner Kate Winslet, Academy Award winner Helen Mirren, Michael Pena. Oh, come on, you can't just put, like, a different award there. That's mean. At least his Twitter followers or something. God damn! And that's the thing. It wasn't just cynical old me who was laughing at this trailer. It was routinely mocked online everywhere.
Will Smith wants that Oscar so fucking bad.
So that's it, huh? We all just some kinda collateral beauty?
I am whelmed.
Because that wasn't the end of it. Because see, the trailer presented the film as being this extremely cliche plot of a man being visited by the concepts of time, death, and love during Christmas time, derive his faith in life. With the idea that you didn't know whether they were hallucinations or real or something else, but all in a very saccharine sweet way. Lame, but at least in a cliche normal way. But the film we got was something else. With glowing reviews like, ahem. At the end of it, I screamed the way polar bears are supposed to when they get their tongues frozen to the ice. Peter Bradshaw, The Guardian. I don't think I've witnessed a film this year that managed to so completely and utterly collapse into crass garbage in its last few minutes while abusing what little goodwill it has. Susan Woloszczyna, RogerEbert.com. It's near impossible to make a movie with no redeeming features, but damned if Collateral Beauty doesn't hit the 0 stars jackpot. Peter Travers, Rolling Stone. Here's a promise that few movies can make. If you sink 2 hours into Collateral Beauty now, it's guaranteed that for the rest of your life, when conversation stalls, you can save the night by asking, "Did you ever see that movie?" Alan Scherstall, The Village Voice. And last but not least, this is, hands down, the single funniest movie ever made about a man grieving for his dead 6-year-old daughter. David Ehrlich, IndieWire. These are all very real reviews, and by the end of this video, you will absolutely 100% understand them. So that utter thrashing was the second death. The third death is the box office. It needs to be stated that a Christmas movie starring Will Smith, Helen Mirren, Edward Norton, Kate Winslet, and Keira Knightley is probably an easy sell to any marketing department. So boy, were they probably disappointed when this didn't even make back its original budget in the States. That's right, this film meant to sell itself on the season. Releasing a Christmas movie near Christmas failed to even reach number 3 in the box office. Granted, it did come out the same day as Rogue One, but just over $12 million on a major release in its first week? That's pathetic. Particularly for the marketing push it got with all of these actors. And then finally came the final death. The funniest one of all. It got no awards attention. 0. It was just barely memorable enough for even the Razzies. And even there, it got just 1 nomination. Probably because they were too busy doing the laziest jokes imaginable about Adam Sandler or something. I don't know, the Razzies suck anyway. But think about that. In a way, everything this film set out to do completely and utterly failed. It was a disaster. And yet, I've been thinking about it for 6 years. And you know why that is? Because this movie is fucking buck wild. I've suggested it a few times, but let me be clear. This movie is not the kind of thing you forget. It is utterly bizarre, confounding, and just utterly terrible. This is the Book of Henry or Dear Evan Hansen of Christmas movies. A movie that treats itself as normal, but in reality is one of the weirdest things you'll ever see. Now at Christmas, we start off with Howard, played by Will Smith, giving a presentation to his ad firm about the three concepts he says defines life: love, time, and death.
We long for love, we wish we had more time, and we fear death.
It will not surprise you that these will be the themes that will be forced down your throat throughout the film's entire runtime. We jump forward in time 3 years to find that Howard is now horribly depressed and barely doing anything. As a result, his firm is going under, as he holds 60% of all controlling stock, but has refused to do anything since returning to work. If nothing is done by Christmas, the company will go under. Howard is a father who has lost a child to a rare disease at the age of 6 about 2 years ago. Since then, he and his wife have separated due to the pain, and Howard only returned to work about 6 months ago, and hasn't been able to function that whole time. I bring up the length of time not to minimize the pain of grief, but to say that if someone is depressed to the point of barely eating, working, or doing anything for 2 whole years, that is a sign of needing severe medical attention, not a kick in the pants. Surrounding him are his co-workers and fellow members of the board. Edward Norton is Whit, a recently divorced philanderer whose kid wishes to not be around him after such a portrayal of her mother.
Why don't you want to spend the holiday with me? I miss you.
Because I hate you.
Kate Winslet is Claire, a woman who has allowed her career to dominate her life so much that now she fears she is running out of time to start a family. And Michael Pena is Simon, a man slowly dying of an illness that he knows he won't win against, while attempting to keep it a secret from everyone in his life as to not worry them. And these board members recognize that if nothing is done soon, people's jobs will be on the line. They must get control of the company. They have to find a way to make Howard's overriding vote not matter. So they hire a private investigator in order to see if there is anything Howard can do that could be a sign that he is not healthy enough to exercise his option. And they discover that he has been writing letters to the concepts of time, love, and death.
So 3 letters.
Who are they to?
Time. Love. Death.
That doesn't prove anything. We can't use that, right?
No, this is therapeutic.
Anything else?
Usually after work, he goes to a small dog park in Brooklyn, even though he doesn't own a dog. Just sits there for hours.
Does he write letters to the dogs?
Are you serious?
Well, that would be like the home run, right? I mean, that's what we need.
Does he?
Not that I saw.
Some of you might know where this is going, and are currently screaming at your computer screens. Don't worry, we're getting to it. It's here when Whit discovers an actress named Amy, played by Keira Knightley, at an audition at the ad firm, and falls so head over heels that he stalks her as she leaves to make it to a small theater where her and 2 others are working on a play, those being Bridget, played by Helen Mirren, and Raffi, played by Jacob Lattimore. Whit meets them, compliments their performances, as they lament they sadly do not have the money to put on the performance. He then promises to help them if he can get the company to make the deal, as then he will become flush with cash. It is here that Whit gets an idea. An awful idea. Whit got a wonderful, awful idea. And I am going to tell you that plan in full detail, so you know that I'm not lying to you. Ready? Whit, Simon, and Claire are going to hire these 3 actors to play time, death, and love, and talk to Howard about his issues. Then they will secretly record his interactions with them, and then digitally remove them from the footage, making him look mentally unsound and unable to exercise any of his power. This is the real premise of the film. A cruel, large-scale gaslighting of their boss because he is too sad about his dead daughter to make the money told as a schmaltzy, tug-on-your-heartstrings story of overcoming grief. And that is what the rest of this film is going to be about. This, my dear friends, is where the film completely dies and becomes completely unredeemable. This is where the film shows its true, ugly hand for what it is. This is a film that is rotten to its very core, because its concept is so incredibly ridiculous that it sputters by just existing. So where do you even go from there? I think it's important that we all take a little bit of a breather from that revelation of what the plot actually is, and really sit down and analyze the implications of it. Because, like, holy shit, right? Like, ignore the fact that removing an entire person from cell phone footage is pretty much impossible, or the pure moon logic of any of this plan. This is essentially driven by the idea that not being mentally fit enough to profit is somehow a detriment. That working and making a company money should be put above all responsibilities, including your own health. Folks, may I introduce you to the idea of the capitalist death cult. The idea that in our capitalist society, we are basically taught to put work before our health and livelihood. That someone who skips work for more than a few weeks due to intense grief is a failed member of society. That profit, maintaining production, all of that is most important. And to be clear, Howard is clearly not just grieving anymore, but in a clear, intensive, depressed state. This can be seen as Howard doesn't eat any food left on his doorstep at several points, and even at one point bikes against traffic, seemingly begging for any car to hit him. Howard is clearly a danger to himself, but while they are concerned about their friend's well-being, it's never their main concern. After all, it always comes second to the deal that will save the company and make all of them rich, and how Howard refuses to make them such money. And as such, they have to gaslight him into believing that he's having delusions, again, a thing that is not actually happening to him, in order to embarrass him and get him to become basically powerless. It is the epitome of money first, humanity second. And yet again, that is the entire premise of our movie. We have an entire hour left of this film to go, and it only goes down from here. Grab your popcorn, everybody! First to interact with Howard is Bridget, taking the role of Death. She escapes into the world of theater without a single second thought, unraveling private details of Howard's life as if she was the real deal. Next comes Raffi as Time, confronting Howard at work, and finally the extremely apprehensive Amy as Love, who eventually does confront Howard at dinner before he leaves.
You gotta be friggin' kidding me. I'm eating.
Are you serious?
That's not what it looks
Right
like.
in front of my salad?
And she admits she feels she's done the wrong thing. That's another part of this movie. Amy is seemingly the only person who doubts the morality of any of this. And yet, her objections are framed as something to overcome. Once again, due to the time ticking, this wildly unethical plan is somehow seen as a moral imperative, despite the obvious fact that it involves such horrendous actions and is definitely not the easiest way of going of things. And because of that, both times she is asked to, Amy ignores her objections and confronts Howard in character. In between each confrontation, we see each member of the board prep one actor on how to deal with Howard. Unsurprisingly, this is all a heavy-handed way of communicating the movie's themes for these characters directly to them. Whit helps Amy, who he attempts to date before she insists that she'll only confront Howard as Love if Whit will bridge the gap between him and his daughter. Claire helps Raffi, who ends up finding out she is desperately searching for a sperm donor and thinks she's running out of time to be a mom.
It's just a stubborn illusion, Claire. You have all the time in the world.
And finally, Simon helps out Bridget, who is the first person to find out
You're dying?
Everyone's dying.
You're not dying.
Sorry.
In the Tibetan philosophy, Sylvia Plath sense of the word, I know we're all dying, right? But you're not dying the way Chloe back there's dying.
All of this while Howard, having experienced these confrontations, starts visiting a support group for parents who have lost a child, titled,
Are you looking for smaller swing support group?
I'm sorry, what? How is that the name of a support group? That name does nothing but make me feel unsupported. Was Tiny Coffins taken or something? Anyway, he's at the support group where he meets the woman who runs it, Madeline, played by Naomi Harris, a woman who has lost her daughter at 6 years old as well. He tells her about the visions, and she encourages him to listen to them and maybe learn something. She then talks about how she too ended up distant from her husband after her child's death, as she says many do, with her husband leaving her a letter that said,
If only we could be strangers again.
Most romantic gesture he ever made.
This is when she tells the story of the time she was in the hospital as her daughter died, and a woman told her that through her pain,
Just be sure to notice the collateral beauty.
What does that even mean?
I would be walking or on the subway or whatever, and I would just burst into tears. But these weren't Olivia tears. It was the collateral beauty.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Appreciate your story, but I'm not really feeling the collateral beauty thing.
I don't care.
Wait, did they auto-tune that last line?
I don't care.
Let's just move on. Anyway, the board members start to feel the deadline creep, and they decide to finally record a big confrontation where Howard will finally feel the need to respond. As such, they badger him about his need to accept his daughter's deaths, and, well, you can expect how this goes.
I felt you inside of me when she called me daddy. I don't want your gift!
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Before finally Howard is shown the digitally edited footage to shock him out of his grief-stricken state and deem him mentally unsound to exercise the deal. He admits he has been failing the company, agreeing to the deal, before finally deciding to sign off on the papers to close the trust for his daughter, finally admitting she's gone forever. So, there is more. None of it is redeeming in the slightest. If anything, it might piss you off even more. But I need to meditate on this for a bit before we get there. Can we just take a second and just reflect on the plan that they just enacted again? They have basically tortured their friend and boss for having lost a child and still not being profit-driven 2 years later, and embarrassed him to his face. And I'm just gonna spoil this right now. They never admit this to him in the film. Ever. He just goes on thinking he had a hallucinogenic breakdown, and that's how he got over his daughter's death. That he hit rock bottom, and his coworkers and friends taped him, yelling at nothing to prove how far gone he really was. We can all agree by now that this is inhumanely awful. And yet, the entire time, the film treats it as an important lesson for all. That sometimes these messages are necessary to move on. But it does so with such a cruel, absolutely fucking disturbing idea that the message makes no sense. They just subjected their own friend to what is basically high-grade MK Ultra level mindfuckery. And this is treated as the kick in the pants everyone needed. And I do mean everyone. Because they all get happy endings. Simon learns to accept death and tell his family, learning that there is closure in a way in death that is shared with loved ones. Whit confronts his daughter at school, telling her how much he wishes to prove to her that he loves her and to gain her trust back. And Claire accepts that she still has time to have a family if she wants. That there's opportunities in the future if she wants, and she doesn't have to rush things.
Are you gonna make a good mom one day?
And Howard visits Madeline's home, where she is watching a video of her husband playing with her daughter, who is also his daughter. as he finally admits that yes, Madeline is his ex-wife. They were strangers again. Okay, so I get the general concept. That love is pure before you've gotten to know each other, the desire to fall in love all over again, having known what you know then. I get it. But that being said, what issues did this work out for them? What has he learned? I guess he started to move on from losing his daughter, but the only thing we see of that is him signing the trust, admitting she'll never receive any of it. But frankly, whatever issues they might have had together, we don't really see any development there. It's a cute idea, I guess, but when she says things like,
Most romantic gesture he ever made.
That's a sign that maybe this relationship shouldn't be rekindled at all. But oh boy, we're not done yet. Want another twist? Do you want to know who told her not to forget the collateral beauty?
Just make sure you notice the collateral beauty.
Turns out they were all actually death, time, and love the whole time! I want to throw things. So, how do we digest all of that? It's so rare to find a film seemingly overthink itself out of the very concept of good taste. And yet this film certainly fits into that definition. It's a film seemingly at war with itself. This film is at a crossroads of trying to portray the real pain people can go through with grief, while also trying to be an ensemble piece that values the rest of the characters and making the reveals at the end a surprise, all while making sure it all ties back into itself. It is the burden of thinking complexity means cleverness. It wants to be this complex puzzle, fitting all of its pieces together into a glorious scene that is a spectacle for the eyes. But if it's anything, it's more like if you stuck a bunch of mismatching elements into one monstrosity that God should smite from the earth. Like the turducken.
Now here's my turducken. It's turkey, you got the turkey on the outside, then you stuff the turkey with a duck, and then you stuff the duck with a chicken.
That is a disgusting act.
Everything here is, well, as I said, just at war with each other. They completely contradict and cancel each other out and end up completely crashing the story down to smithereens. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The film wants its messages to be delivered by these surrogates, these representations of the themes talking directly to other characters about the lessons. But it also wants it to be a surprise when they turn out to not be real people. So they need this horrifying plot device of these people hiring these actors to gaslight someone who is supposed to be their friend in order to still surprise you. And that brings up another issue. They don't do this simply because they think it'll help him. They very clearly state that it's secondary to their real motive, which is getting this deal passed. They talk a lot about the company going under and the fear of them losing money, without really ever mentioning much about it outside of the fact that they do advertising, used to be successful, and now aren't. But there is something that they are trying to obscure there, which is that it's just the company's money that's in trouble. All of these characters are fine! At several points in the movie, they try to argue that Whit is poor because he's living with his mother, and he says he doesn't have much money since his divorce. But they are all literal board members of a major advertising firm that appears to be working with Oreo and Oneida Limited. Simon lives in a nice house with his wife and son, and Claire offers to pay Howard's rent for his spacious New York apartment. And speaking of Howard, they let their CEO have a bereavement break of 1.5 years. They are doing fine. And here's the thing, it's even worse. Cheer up, Howard. Whit, the supposed poorest member of the board, offers Howard seats to a Christmas Day game at Madison Square Garden between the Knicks and the Cavaliers, who at this point are the defending NBA champions.
So rapid fire round while I got you? Cavs are in town. Christmas showdown at the Garden. I never give your seat away. I just go solo, but we could go. Don't even have to talk. Don't even have to look at each other. We can do just what we're doing right now and just watch the game. Be like old times.
Which, first of all, they're going to take your depressed friend to see the 2016-17 New York Knicks?
Enough for them to turn it around. And certainly, oh my goodness, someone opened the door.
His very first move as the executive was to sign Lamar Odom, who was on crack!
What, are you trying to make him feel worse? But also, those are expensive, particularly on Christmas Day. The most generous implication is that he and Howard have season tickets to the Knicks, and Whit has been too nervous to give away his friend's tickets. But even then, that's not very good. I mean, season tickets can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and he is still paying for them. He is doing fine. He is not broke. They are all doing fine, really. The money issues here are not going to hurt the characters specifically. They're only here superficially because they are a staple of the genre. And that is the problem, really. What is this mess if not a cobbled-together conspiracy board of tropes that have been forcibly tied into a complex labyrinth of yarn just to make a movie that is just barely coherent enough to be put into theaters? I mean, for fuck's sake, the money running out in the Visitation of Spirits is just taken directly from It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Carol. And all of these mismatched tropes make sense when you consider that first scene as the entire reason this film exists. As mentioned, the scene is Howard explaining the 3 basic tenets that apply to every person, and how they can use them for easy appeal at his advertising company. The broad strokes to capture humanity.
Love, time, death. Now these 3 abstractions connect every single human being on Earth.
The film is an advertising trick. It's broad strokes and tropes you've seen and loved before to convince you to spend money on it. It doesn't have an ounce of sincerity to it. The film is literally breaking itself down to the very essences that it thinks can grab you for even a second. Not an ounce of it feels the least bit authentic. The idea of coming to terms with mortality, trying to gain back a loved one after messing up, and especially grief and depression, all of it is done with so little attention to detail, particularly when it comes to overcoming those problems, that it all feels so manufactured, like the I can't believe it's not butter of emotional art. It feels like a bunch of advertisers in a room wondering what would tug on the heartstrings of an audience the most, rather than coming from a real place. And that reflects the film's making too. Think about it. How did casts like this come together? On the backs of each actor, and the idea that some of these actors can somehow manage to get awards out of it. As mentioned, Will Smith at this point was still going for his Oscar, a thing he finally won this year, at a ceremony where he did nothing else weird at all. Nothing weird at all. But at this point in time, it was common knowledge that he would do anything to get it. He really wanted it. You could argue that's how a lot of the actors in this film joined in, looking to fall back behind prestige even if the project was questionable. None of this came from a real place. It's all just a Hallmark card that they had to Rube Goldberg machine into 100 minutes, and that's why it's so utterly ridiculous. It shouldn't exist. It is a monstrosity of science. And yet it does exist. Just to sell the idea of itself to you. And I guess there's no more fitting time to do that than at Christmas. The industry of selling the idea of Christmas to us as a way of getting us to feel giant corporations and money-making conglomerates are all a part of it all, just another piece of the family, has become more and more present in the season. I mean, yes, we know the season has been commercialized, but there are still elements to it that are truly authentic, that belong to any person regardless of what holiday they celebrate. And that is the idea of spreading care. The act of gift giving for the sake of seeing someone else's smile. The idea that the end of the year makes us reflect on those important in our lives, the ones we'd rather be home with. That is real, which makes the inauthenticity of trying to sell it back to us all the worse for wear. To quote Stephen Nissenbaum from his book The Battle for Christmas,
perhaps the very speed and intensity with which those essentially new rituals were claimed as timeless traditions shows how powerful was the need to keep the relationship between family life and a commercial economy hidden from view, to protect children, and adults too, from understanding something troublesome about the world they were making.
They may attempt to play on the real emotions you may have, but it's all just a ploy for their bottom line. And that's the thing. This isn't about how we've lost our ways or whatever. I mean, I don't care about the Christ and Christmas or whatever, I'm an atheist. But more importantly, I don't think that it's us that are the reason why Christmas has become so inauthentic. I mean, tell me what you like most about this season, and I guarantee you it's not Campbell's Soup and Coca-Cola ads. It's the people that matter to you, and whatever you personally do to celebrate this winter season. That's a real thing that we love about this time of year, separate from all of that. And we know it when we see it. Because not all films about this time of year are like this. I mentioned a few earlier, but I'm sure you have some that you can think of right now that truly reflect some real feelings to you, that you might have even had at one point. Art is supposed to do that. It's supposed to come from a place of passion, just like the very reasons we may love this time of year. And it makes false sincerity like this stink even more. Whether it's a commercial selling you on the idea that Hershey's is just as much a part of your life in the holidays as the person you hold dear, or just a mess of a movie that fails so hard at hitting you the rest becomes laughable, some of this Christmas advertising can feel so inauthentic. And at a time of year that symbolizes a year gone, when we huddle together and show our appreciation, you deserve better than that. Regardless of what you celebrate, regardless of what you're doing, where you are, and who you're spending your time with this winter, I wish you all happy holidays. And I hope you all don't forget the collateral beauty. Yes, I'm really ending the video like that.
And Columbus, and all they hear is every devil making a ruckus. Start a fire to remind you where they go after the now. Do they know it's Christmas and now?
I like to give a special thanks to my $10 a month patrons: Tegan B, Maxibon, Morgan T, Arifa San, Daniel, Felicity, Corey Fuimaono, Cameron Kanaki, Ben Birdperson, and Emily Pincus.